Sorry, I'm not responding. I'm showing right now. I'm eating, so. And it is a beautiful day.
Board Member Delgado, I just wanted to thank you for your support last night on our agenda item for the recruitment platform. I'm really, really excited about that. So thanks again.
I'm excited myself.
Yeah.
It's a really great presentation, so.
Thank you.
I think it's going to be well worth the money. So hopefully the full board will think the same and will approve it.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hello.
Sorry, my cat just came to visit as soon as I clicked on join.
That's why my camera's off.
Oh, well.
That's sweetie.
We have another one here. Here, Braxton. Oh. We have our new guide dog in training. Braxton, come. Hey, Braxton, come here. Facing the other cat. Hey. So, this is a guide dog in training, Braxton. He will be 4 months old tomorrow.
Oh, hi, baby.
Aww.
And we'll see if he'll be coming to visit school in April or not. We'll see if he's ready for that. He's our 29th.
That's amazing.
Yeah, start feeling old though when you count them.
Yeah, I have an aversion to numbers.
Sorry, guys. I had a construction person coming to give an estimate, so there we go. All right. All righty. Should we call the meeting to order, everyone? I think it's 5:30, and I'm going to call the meeting to order. All right. So the first item that we have today is to look at the previous agenda and to approve the last meeting agenda. Is there somebody who would second that, or?
I'll move to approve the agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Perfect. All in agreement?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the motion carries and it's approved. And then let me bring up the board doc.
Do you want me to show them, Evelyn? Are you looking at the minutes?
That would be wonderful.
Yeah, I can do that quick. Does everybody have access to that?
I put the link in the chat.
Perfect.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know how easy it'll be to read, but I'll make it as big as I can.
All right. Okay, so then this next item is to approve the minutes for today. And is there someone who can I'm sorry, guys. Put that motion up, or?
I'll move to approve last month's.
Thank you.
Second.
Anyone second? Thank you. And all in agreement?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. So then that brings us to the business action items, and we had a presentation scheduled today on recruitment strategies, and that was Tanya Williams. And is Tanya with us today?
I am.
Oh, awesome. Great.
Hi.
Hello.
Yeah. Hi. So it's nice to meet everybody. I'm Tanya Williams. I have been in this role for about a year and a half. I do have some slides that I'm going to share, but because I really don't know everybody that is on this committee, I at least wanted to give you a little bit of background information about me. Like I said, I've been in this role for about a year and a half. Many years ago, I worked in education. I worked in a middle school, and I was the administrative assistant to a principal. And so it was at that time that I really understood how a lot of our departments intersect with each other in education. And at that time was going to school for my degree in HR. From there, I worked in the school district of Janesville in their HR department, and then ended up going into healthcare for about 8 years. So I was in 2 large healthcare organizations doing first employee benefits and then employee relations. So a lot of the recruitment background that I have is all about HR best practices, but not only that, like really heavy recruiting and really kind of like uncovering stones and looking for opportunities in recruitment. So when I worked at UW Health, we actually created a pipeline with our Centro Hispano organization. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that organization, but we were actually able to create a pipeline or a pathway to get people interested in careers in healthcare, focusing mostly on positions where they didn't need like a medical certification or license, but then created that pathway where then we would get them into the education that they needed to become a medical assistant, which we had a total shortage of. So I think a lot of the experiences I've had there carries over well here into education because of the shortages that we have, and we know that we have the opportunities to get our folks that maybe aren't certified as a teacher, but work as a para. They're interested in that career pathway. So we just need to kind of start looking at how we put those resources in place and make it that pathway where it's seamless and easy for people that are interested in education in that pathway. So I wanted to provide some of that background for you, since I don't know a lot of you, and you may not know that I've had some of those experiences and that background. So with that, I am going to present. And please, I'm not always the best when it comes to presenting and getting where I need to be. So let's see here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
And if anyone has questions, just go ahead. I can't read the audience, so Tony said that he would be able to let me know if somebody has a question. Just feel free to chime in. So what I wanted to start out with was an actual slide of what our student diversity is currently. And so this information was presented to the board in January. And I think what's important about the the number and understanding what our student diversity is that we want our employee representation to represent what we have for students in our district, because really that's what the work is that we're doing. So when we're driving student achievement, it's important to have a staff that's representative of the different races and ethnicities that are in our district and our community as well. This next slide, and I'm sorry about this, but this is really hard to read.
Tanya, can you present? If you present, it might make it a little bit bigger, rather than just showing the. There you go.
Is that better if I do it this way?
I don't think we can see the grid now. We just the title.
You went to the first page again because you pressed from the beginning. So maybe just do the present online.
Sorry. Okay, let me. And this slide has a whole lot of information, but it's just unfortunately that it's so small to begin with. So I was able to fit it on one page. This is actually a page that is out of our diversity report that we presented in January. Let me see.
Is it something we could even have shared with us to look at?
Sure, absolutely. And I can send these slides. Is that better by any chance?
You're not presenting anymore.
I'm not presenting anymore.
You're not sharing, yeah.
It's okay, it happens. I have a student who reminds me that's their job. I'm not resenting.
So Tanya, while you're doing that, did you have a sense of, because I saw the numbers, it was like, I think it was 2,000, over 2,000 Latino students, but what percentage, do you have a sense of the percentage that is?
Yes, I can pull that up real quick here. I'm sorry, did you say students or staff?
Well, both would be actually interesting.
Hispanic? Okay, so for students, we have for Hispanic students 30.2% full enrollment. And then for our staff, we have we have 75 Hispanic staff members altogether. And so I would have to do some quick math. But out of like the staff population of 829, 75 are Hispanic. And that's combined female and male. 75, oh, I'm sorry, we've got 75, 83 altogether. Someday, we are going to make sure like these reports look better and easier to read.
Tanya, you said you had 83 total staff members out of how many?
Out of, I'm sorry, we have.
Is that including paraprofessionals, bilingual homeschool liaisons, other?
It is, yeah. So we have 903 staff members. We have 83 Hispanic staff members altogether. So keep in mind, too, that when a staff member is hired here in the district, we're not gathering data at the time that we're recruiting them. Our software platform doesn't allow us to gather some of those metrics and that data. We do have supplemental questions. It's really up to them if a candidate decides that they're going to answer those questions. it's at the time when we're hiring somebody that we're really able to gather that data on race and ethnicity. And so I think my point to that is, that's what makes it sometimes difficult to know from a perspective of recruiting diverse candidates, understanding, how they're self-disclosing that information. So I wanted to give some context around that. So it's usually not until we have somebody hired that we really have some good data around that. And I'm sorry again that this slide is all kind of, teeny tiny. Does anybody have any questions about some of the metrics and the data before I move on to the next slide?
Well, could you give us an overview of what, because I see it says district, is it staff diversity here?
Yes.
And so is there something here about like language or, is that those staff speak Spanish or not necessarily, or do we have a way of assessing that?
That's a good question. So we don't capture that in our systems. What we are able to capture, though, is when we're doing a job description for a candidate, we can put that in the qualifications. So we usually put that in the preferred qualifications. We're always looking for bilingual candidates. But yeah, our systems and the data that we have, it doesn't capture if somebody speaks more than one language and what languages that would be. Mm-hmm. So, but I think looking ahead, maybe that's some opportunity for HR and really kind of to dig in and see if other organizations are doing that and how they house that and where they house that.
I guess one of the things it is a little hard to read is, one thing that's often talked about in our society is that are the people we are hiring who are people of color, minors, are they more often hired in positions that are the lower paying positions? Are we, I guess, how well are we doing in terms of making sure we're having people of Spanish speaking background, Latino Hispanic background who are in positions of, greater pay and responsibility?
Yeah, so I think when I look at like the district's initiatives are for recruitment and retention, we continue to provide data to the board. So on an annual basis, we have provided this report annually. We're just starting this year to really start digging into the data and providing more frequent updates. So when we go to the board next week, we will actually be providing information on the diversity of our interviews in those panels. So that way, we're continually driving the importance of having diverse interviewing panels. The other thing too is really when we're looking at recruitment strategies and how we're building those diverse candidate pools. Our recruitment software platform, WeCan, was really a Wisconsin-based platform. And so when they would post for positions, it was really in Wisconsin or that what they would call that CISA area. So like if you're an applicant and you're from Wisconsin, you know that system very well. So in November, we teamed up with diversityjobs.com, and they come in and they actually scrape our jobs, and then they're able to do some outreach outside of Wisconsin and post positions. And so we're able to get some metrics that way. Indeed does something very similar as diversityjobs.com. But last night we presented to the Budget and Planning Committee on proposing a new recruitment platform to be adopted by the district, which will be more robust when it comes to posting for positions. And like the whole idea is really building the diverse candidate pools and virtual spheres and where we're getting that diversity from. So that way, when our hiring leaders are posting for their positions and they're interviewing, they have they have diversity already as part of that candidate pool for selections. So, and I do have a slide that talks about recruitment strategies, and it kind of goes into some of those items, and I think I touched upon a little bit of that. So, and hopefully I did answer your question.
Sure, can I follow up with that? Both my wife and I are professional educators in the district. Both of us were also paraeducators at one time. And I noticed that like 46% of our paraeducators are minority. We're only 15% of our professional educators. But when we both went back to school, she went earlier than I did. And at that time, any continuing ed for paraeducators like that was actually paid for by the district. Whereas when I went, it was paid out of pocket. And then, for many people, I think that would make a huge difference when you're thinking of the salaries of paraeducators compared to professional educators. Would that be, we have people who are already working in the schools, who are bilingual. Would that be a way to look at that? Go back to what we used to do of, helping that transition. If there are people who are in that position who are already working with our students, growing our own as we talk about.
So, and I agree. I think it goes back to creating those pathways and, getting people in the door that are interested in educating our students and growing their career. And so I'm going to tell you probably the biggest challenge with that is always a funding source. And so I know like Tony Bosco and his team continue to look at funding sources. I know our finance department is looking at ways too. And I know Joanne Armstrong is starting a budget working committee that I'm hoping like some of that work from that committee can help spill over into the work that we're doing with HR and creating those pathways. I think another challenge that we run into is that we know that the interest is out there, but typically a lot of the times you need like a certain number for a cohort to move forward with one of our partners, one of the universities that we work with. So, and it's usually like a high number, like I think 14 is what UW-Whitewater has wanted to see from us. And so we continue to see that as a challenge too. I think, if we can get through like the funding challenges and work through that, I think the other pieces could fall into place much easier because it's once again, you're putting those steps in place for people. They're confident that if they go through a program, that in the funding is there. I think we would probably get more interest rather than, on the backside, like tell us that you're interested and we'll try to get the funding together. So I think that's probably one of the biggest challenges that we have to work through when we're creating the pathways. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
it sounds like from things we've talked about that maybe this is one of the things we'd want to try and encourage is, if, language is an issue, having more people speaking it, if we can grow our own. So how we develop that funding, those funding sources might be a priority for what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just think, moving forward, I think those are the kinds of things that need to be built into budgets. So, and I know there's usually like title funds and things like that. And I think that's some of the areas that Tony has explored. And I don't want to steal your thunder, Tony, but like I know you created a partnership with Concordia, and there's been some opportunities there. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah, that's what our whole presentation is right after you, Tanya.
Okay.
So,
okay.
No,
okay. So good segue, right? So,
yep.
Okay.
I think Megan also had a question. She had her hand.
Sorry to jump in here. I'll unclick the button. Hey, thank you for that. That was really informative. I want to piggyback quickly off of something that Kurt was talking about. And if this has already been covered, I apologize. It stepped away about a minute ago for something. But so we also, is there data that shows not just the recruitment and the current staffing, but how many of our employees of color or employees who speak Spanish are actually what's the word? Advancing? I'm not sure if there's what the correct HR term is for that, but I mean, a lot of what I've heard in this committee and from community members is while people are very grateful for the liaison positions, there's not necessarily a lot of accessibility for parents in positions like assistant principals, principals, and other staff that, that is, of course, important for our community to have a good relationship with. So I'm curious if there's a way to gather data and track data on how many of our current staff are, so in addition to the Grow Your Own, how many of them are actually advancing, and what those interview panels look like within buildings. Because I think that anecdotally, we've heard over the past several years that there have been some problems and maybe a lack of opportunity there.
No, I think that's a great point, and thank you. Because I do think moving forward, we will continue to bring updates to the board in terms of those metrics of who's sitting on panel interviews. I think too, like, first of all, you always want to grow. You always want to promote within. Succession planning is also really another important aspect of HR and recruitment. And, when you look at who our administrators are, you have your principals and you have your assistant principals. So there's some things that we could be providing for our assistant principals in terms of mentoring and growing them, so then they can easily move into those positions when they open. And so, they're like our best people, right? They know our culture, they know the students, there's not much of a learning curve because they're already internal employees versus going externally and looking for candidates. So I think that's one way to look at it too. I think succession planning is important in an organization, and I think that's just an opportunity that we have moving forward. And I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yeah, you did. I would love to see, and I understand that you don't have it necessarily in your pocket right now, and this is not in any way a criticism. I'm hopeful that going forward, we can take a look at that data and then really read into what that means for us in terms of who is advancing in our organization and why, based on what the needs are in our community. And I think that I don't know if some of the work of this committee could be to survey and to talk to parents about what that experience has been like for them in terms of being able to relate to children's buildings, how culturally responsive building culture is. I will just say that somebody making $16 or $17 an hour is not well positioned to pay for, it's a minimum of about $11,000 to go get an additional an administrative license. Yeah. So I guess my follow-up, and then I'm good after this. I guess, has there been any thought into partnership with other public schools in Rock County? I know that the school district of Janesville has a fairly successful Grow Your Own program, and I'm not sure, as long as there's some fancy legal non-compete language or something. Is there anything stopping us from collaborating to get into one of those cohorts?
No. And I think Tony has probably done a little work around that area and tried to network with some of the area districts to grow maybe some of those cohorts. And I don't know, Tony, if that's part of your next presentation or if you have any updates about that. But no, I think that is an opportunity. I think instead of looking at it as kind of a competition, because I see that where people leave for one district to another, maybe overcompensation in some of those reasons. And so I think if we start looking at it where our HR departments and other departments within districts are more collaborating versus competing for people, we're kind of all in the same situation in a sense when it comes to teacher shortages and some of the same challenges that we have. Not only are we having a hard time and struggling with building diverse candidate pools, other school districts are as well. And so that's where you see we're all kind of using or kind of working the same initiatives in a sense. So if I go to HR conferences, some of the things that we've been working on, other districts are in the infant stages of just trying to get things moving in the right direction. So again, I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No,
Megan.
you did. No, Tanya, no,
Okay.
I really appreciate it. I know these are, these can be hard conversations to have because like we're just not there yet, but I appreciate your willingness to go there. So thank you so much for addressing that.
Board Member Delgado had a question as well.
Okay.
I've been listening and just kind of grasping some of the things that you're saying, Tanya, and what board member. It's been so growing your own and the opportunities that we actually offer to our, say, Latino or Hispanic, because that's what we're talking about right now. Workers that we currently have in the school. I think that's like a big. It's a big project, and I think that we can do a lot more than what we're currently doing right now. I would really like to see, like I was thinking about the question that Kurt had about, do we have a sense or an idea of how many administrators do we have that are, of Hispanic descent or Latino? What is like our ratio, from students as far as, higher position goes, to just, because I know we have a lot of paras and we have the school liaisons, and we have, and some of those paras have been given the opportunity to, start their path as a teacher as well. But, what are we doing as far as like guidance? Do we have an actual plan on, what we can do? Can that plan be created if we don't actually have one? Those are just like one of my like questions and something that I would really love to see this district move forward to have an actual plan, not just we're able to offer this right now and then you offer it once and then it's gone. Like the cohorts and that, it's not something that it's there like, or every year you have this available for certain, eligible or qualifying individuals that, are desiring to move up or to, try to do something higher than what they're currently doing. So, I don't know. I just would love to see something like an actual plan that it's there for like an every year thing, not just, once in a while. Now this new thing just came up, let's try it out and then it's done. So, that's just my comment.
No, and I agree. It's kind of like, like the trend of the month, so we kind of jump on board and we're going to try this out, and I agree. It's putting in a plan that sustains itself and is a benefit to not only our staff, but to our district as well. One thing that I wanted to share. So, when we look at the systems and structures that we have here in HR, we're working on some really archaic and manual processes. And I think that unfortunately has put us behind in the work that we needed to do that was strategic. So when you look at recruitment strategies and retention strategies, because we have worked so hard on doing all these manual practices, and like when we're pulling metrics and data, like that's all very manual too, that can fuck up a lot of the FTE for the people that are doing that work rather than having those folks work on some of those strategies. So with that being said, I wanted to share with everyone that we now have a recruiter position posted. And so the whole idea behind having a recruiter is going to help us with some of the strategic work. So this person can help drive consistent application and interviewing processes, provide PD to our hiring leaders, building candidate pools and pipelines. And they can do that by attending like our recruitment fairs. Marketing is so huge in recruitment and using social media, which by the way, we do have a careers page, a Facebook careers page. And like, if everyone can just go out there and like it and share it and make sure like maybe organically, like we're driving the numbers up there. We've been trying to post like our hard to fill positions and boosting positions that we know are hard to fill. Outside of even the Beloit community, in some outreach to see if we can get, even some more diverse candidates. So when you think of a recruiter, they're really thinking through like some of those strategic initiatives. And so I'm really excited about this position. So like I had stated, I had been in this position or have been in this position for 1.5 years, and we sat on this FTE because I really wanted to make sure, like, if we're going out for FTE or we're bringing another person into HR, that this person is really strategic and project-minded, because there's some really heavy lifting items that need to be done in this area. And like I said, you know, we've had really archaic systems. We have systems that don't talk to each other. So we're really kind of like spinning our wheels down here all the time, and we're not allowing the systems and structures to work for us. So then the strategic work kind of just gets left behind. So like I said, really excited about this recruiter. I think it's really going to help us hopefully move some things along. And to your point, like, let's build the plan, you know, like the next step is, you know, like, we know who our partners are, our colleges, our universities. We have the contacts. We know that we need to bring the cohorts together. We just got to package it up tidy for them and market it. And the funding source is also important as well. Last night, like I said, we proposed an upgrade to our recruitment software platform. That will also enhance a better experience for our candidates as well. We're going to be able to market and brand the school district of Beloit through that platform. And then not only that, but like the whole onboarding experience, it's very paper intense. You know, everybody gets emailed some fillable forms, and then we scan them back in. You know, with their onboarding experience and being able to house those documents, you know, as they move through their career, you know, they'll be able to go back to their profile and see their forms out there. And not only that, but we'll be able to use this platform for even like their annual contracts or any annual update forms, maybe even benefits. We have a lot of possibilities with this. And then really our interviewing and onboarding experiences. So, interviewing somebody from outside of Wisconsin, we'll have the capability of doing that. And we've had the capability of doing that since last spring, when we really had to adapt to virtual interviewing, and we used Google to do that. But this platform allows us to schedule, you know, everybody that's on the panel will be able to see, you know, the interviewing schedule and some of those functions. So those are some of the recruitment strategies that we have going on. And of course, you know, we have some traditional recruitment activities too. And that's not to say, you know, we would still recognize those as well. So, so then the next thing is our retention strategies. So we can't talk about recruitment without talking about retention. And so this is one thing that I was really excited about this year. So we have a third-party consultant who does our employee engagement survey. And so last year we do the data, we do the survey every fall, and then in the spring it's like a pulse survey to see, you know, were there improvements, are there areas that we need to focus on. The problem with that was that we really weren't doing anything with the data. And so when Teresa Moratek came on as the Executive Director of Teaching, Learning, and Equity, and it's her and Tony Bosco and their teams who really focus on that school improvement planning process, we are marrying that survey data with our school improvement planning process. So we can really understand, you know, like what drives employee engagement or what are our opportunities. So definitely more to come on that. We've also been talking about our mentor and mentee programs as well. Rochelle Elliott takes the lead on that programming, and through our staff survey, we've learned some things about our mentor and mentee programs. And I'm sorry, I can't probably speak to all of that. But yeah, we're just looking to see, making sure that we're matching our new candidates, our new staff members with like a great mentor. And I'm not saying that I think all of our mentors are great, but I think making sure that we're matching people up with the right people is important.
Yeah. I'm actually on the team for that, and I know we had trained over 100 plus people this summer. Really had a big focus. So Rochelle has really taken lead on that.
She's awesome. Yes. So, and thank you for being part of that program too. I'd love to sit in on like maybe one of your guys' meetings sometimes just to see kind of, the things that you guys are doing. And when I think of onboarding, like when somebody comes into an organization, like those first few weeks, and they're kind of just trying to figure things out, I'd love to see kind of like the different topics and the things that you guys talk with our new hires about. So that way, maybe like I have some things that maybe like maybe more operational from like an HR standpoint than like the instructional side, but like maybe we can marry some of those things together. So
yeah, and I know she has a Google Classroom, I think, for both the mentors and the new teachers, being mentored. That she posts a lot of those things, so maybe that would be a place to put it too.
Oh, yeah, that would be great. And then our professional development. So one thing we learned in our engagement survey is with professional development, it's not a one-size-fits-all in a sense. So our new staff members are looking for different opportunities with professional development where maybe our veteran staff, they may be looking for professional development that's not the same as our new staff. So we're taking a closer look at those things. The other thing is state interviews. So state interviews, I'm a firm believer that exit interviews, we are losing some opportunities there. I would rather know like what's not working well within the first 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days, rather than somebody leaving the organization and you had no idea that maybe they thought a certain way or they didn't have the tools or resources to do the job that they were doing. So having those intentional timeframes to check in with an employee and having intentional questions around those timeframes will help drive some employee engagement as well. And then the last thing, of course, for retention is creating those talent pipelines or pathways, getting our non-certified staff to become certified. How do we package that up very easily for them? Also providing pathways for people that may have a license already, but really getting the licensure in a specialized area like ESL or special ed, and in those areas and in other hard to fill areas. So that's another piece of the work that we need to do is really, really hone in on what our hard to fill positions are in the district. We all kind of know what they are. We just don't always have the metrics behind that because one of our systems with WeCan, we were never able to really pull that data to see like the number of days it takes to fill a position. So, all right. So, those are kind of the things that we're working on. Some are ideas yet. So does anybody have any questions or feedback for me?
I have a couple of questions, Tanya. My first one, I guess, is just to clarify. So when you said, I kind of did the math, and it looks like we have about, I think, a little less than 10% staff that are Latino staff, or Hispanic staff, and then we had about 30% students. So is one of the district goals, would you say, then to have about 30% Latino staff?
Yes. Yeah. So I'll be honest, I don't have a number on that, but yes, I think anytime. So when I think of diversity, I also think, so it's African American, Hispanic, even LGBTQ staff and women over the age of 50, vets, people that may have a disability status as well. So when I'm looking at diversity, I'm looking at it from a really like a holistic perception or picture. And so, but yes, I do believe that our minority staff should reflect what our student population is as well. So, yeah, I think if we can build the candidate pools, we can get there.
Tanya, Board Member Delgado had a question as well. Or sorry, Evelyn, did you have another question?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, Board Member Delgado.
I have a comment. I think the retaining plan, it's a great plan, but it works better when it's really, when you make sure that everyone is following that process, through, and holding people accountable for that. I think it works a lot better also when it's not only just offered to new employees, but employees that are moving up or moving to different positions as well, to make sure that they have that availability to provide feedback of what's going well and what's not. I think a lot of our staff, and I'm going to say this only because I talked to a group of ESL teachers, that sometimes the lack of guidance really discourages them from, moving to different positions or even staying within the district because they feel that there's no guidance available. So making sure that there's guidance for those that are, trying out different positions, because that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we're retaining those people. But if they feel that there's no guidance, that there's no one to turn to, it's going to discourage them to stay in the district.
I agree. So a couple of things. So I think when we talk about retention, although it may feel like it lives in HR, I look at it like our role is really to put the tools in place to help the organization and to help like our leaders and help people drive those retention efforts. Like with the engagement survey and marrying that with our school improvement planning process, there's several people that drive that school improvement plan that's really not an HR thing. So I totally agree with what you're saying. I think, yes, state interviews, definitely we could be doing that with all of our staff and not just our new staff, or when somebody transfers over into a new position. And then I think that guidance piece is really important too. And I think it goes back to our mentoring program too. And so maybe that, and Kurt, can you confirm like how many years is somebody a mentor to a mentee? Is it just their first year or is it longer than that?
Well, it's been 1 year, but I know they've been looking at up to 3, especially those of us working through the new teacher center. I think though now what they've added is often after your first year you have a buddy the second year who is not quite as intensive a support, but is there for questions you might have.
Can I ask another question? So how different is it for like let's say for the ESL program or the dual language program, do they have the same opportunities with the body system or the mentor system as like regular teachers do? Do you feel or do you find it that maybe it's more difficult because that portion or that section of like the ESL group, it's a lot smaller than what it would be for like regular teachers?
I know Rochelle oversees more of the who's assigned with whom, but I think all of them have someone who is supporting them in some way. I don't know the details of how she's dealt with that.
Yeah, because I think when you pair someone that it's like mentoring or body, it has to be someone of like the same kind of realm of, education or, whatever they're doing. Because if you pair it with someone else that has nothing to do, say, with ESL, the way that's driving, if there's questions or anything like that, regarding that specific program, a mentor would be pretty much useless because they would not be able to actually provide that mentorship to that, new person. So, I think that, that's very important. The other piece too is like, Tanya, you mentioned that, you're like the HR, person, but so really making sure that others are accountable really goes to that program area or school per se. So there has to be different levels of accountability set with, measurable standards in order to really have a continuum on that process. Otherwise, everything's just going to get in translation, and then it's going to be like pointing fingers. Well, so-and-so didn't do this. There has to be a level of accountability measures set for, for everyone pretty much, as far as, making sure that those surveys are being done or making sure that those interviews are being done, making sure that that guidance is being provided.
I agree. So when we rolled out stay interviews with another employer that I had worked with, we had a lot of conversations around that as well. And so we did track when our leaders were meeting with staff because it did drive that accountability piece. I think with the mentoring and mentee program, I don't want to speak for a program that I don't really oversee, but I do think there's opportunities there in terms of like even so when our mentors are paired up with our mentees, one thing that we could create, and this is an idea that I have, it would be a checklist, and Kurt, and I apologize if you guys already have this in the works, okay? So, but like, I know when I've started with an organization, like I want to know where I can find a policy about attendance. I want to know where I can find like what the expectations are around a dress code. And those not only are your leaders, your hiring leaders having conversations and onboarding conversations with you, but it's kind of like, it's like a pack and play in a sense, like just show me where to find things on the portal, because we all know like our website can be there's a lot of information out there. Where do I go to enter my time off requests? Where do I, find this in the building, because each of our buildings are a little different and we all have like different nuances within our buildings and in that sort of thing. Different leaders, may have a different preference, if you're calling in sick, just throw me a text. You don't need to call me, where another building leader is like, nope, I need this person to call me always, So, I just think it helps right away, maybe not so much like an accountability piece, but you really truly know, like from day one, like what things really look like in the landscape you're working in. And it makes people feel better, having that information at their fingertips. So just a couple of ideas. So yes, we, in fact, I was talking to my team the other day and I said, just start thinking of like different things that we can put on a checklist. We get fielded with a lot of questions a lot from staff and new staff. And so, a lot of times we'll be pointing them in one direction and maybe the mentor is pointing them in another direction and then the building leader. And so, that becomes frustrating for staff as well too. So I think if, we can streamline some of those processes, that will help too. I'm sorry, I think I went down a rabbit hole.
Kurt had a question.
Well, I was just going to add to that. And Tony, you've worked with some of this in the past before Rochelle did, but there, we have had that list of things like those, of all the things that you need just basic answers to. Usually in the building, the principal oversees who you're partnered with for mentoring, and they try to do that within the same topic area, but it doesn't always work. Like there's only one art teacher, so I've mentored the art teacher before. But some of what we do, and especially now we've been working with a new teacher center on each year training more mentors in a greater depth, and especially focusing on one, how you teach the standards, but also for equity, which has been a huge issue how are we teaching for equity for our students and for each other. So now I think we're getting close to like a dozen people who are in process of going through the 3-year training. And so it's not just answering questions, but helping new teachers look at how your standards align with your teaching. How are you engaging students? How are you making sure that they're learning what they need to learn? And all those are also designed to help retain teachers longer. So I think that is really a strong development phase. It is sometimes hard to line up, mentors with people in the same area if you're in the same, because you prefer to be in the same building and there's not always someone doing that. And I know we have sometimes gone across district, but I think we really try, administrators really try hard to do that in their buildings.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think one more thing I wanted to add to, like with state interviews, and I think as important as it is to have some accountability there, I also don't want it to be a situation where people are like, oh, check, I talked to that person. Oh, check, I talked to that person. You want those conversations to be organic. I worked with a leader once that told me, like, she would take their new hire or their staff member out on a walk, and she said we would do our state interviews or our check-ins, and we'd walk, and it felt like we were getting out of like this space, this workspace, and it was like out in the open, and yeah, it gave both the leader and the staff member a chance to open up. So, any other feedback for me? Like, what would you guys like me to know from an HR perspective when we're looking at recruitment strategies, building diverse candidate pools? Are there opportunities that I need to explore further?
Well, I think, I think one is kind of a question also that I have is when we're talking about recruiting and retaining staff, I think we need to be very clear about what we're recruiting in terms of Latino and teachers that speak Spanish, exactly what we're recruiting for. We need to be very precise because, recently, for example, we had an opportunity to recruit and hire from someone in a different country, for example, and it seemed that there was obstacles for that to happen. And I'm not saying that that's the way we should go, but I think we need to be very clear about, are we recruiting, just Spanish-speaking teachers? Are we recruiting local teachers? Are we recruiting Latino teachers? And how that process is, like you said, there was a challenge about identifying teachers because you don't really know until after someone's hired and how they identify. But that piece, I think, is potentially something that we could refine in some ways to help first of all answering the question, I guess, who are we recruiting and what characteristics are we looking for?
Yeah, and I think so when you're thinking about like characteristics, I would probably say, like, we also want to look for knowledge and skills and abilities as well. And so that's part of the whole interview process, and really looking at what our interview questions and our format is. So that way, it's not only is it a good experience for the candidate, but you're able as a hiring leader to really be able to tell, like, this person is going to be a good fit for this role, because that's part of retention too. I mean, we can build diverse candidate pools, but you also want to hire for fit too. So that's when you also look at the job description as well. You're looking at the essential job functions. You're looking at the qualifications. So when you're looking at minimum qualifications, having minimum qualifications allows you to build your candidate pool. So you don't want to go in with like 10 different minimum qualifications. Like, this person needs to have like an excellent communication style, because I've seen that, and it's like, at the end of the day, that's not a minimum qualification. That's not going to help you build your candidate pool. it's really when you start looking at the preferred qualifications, and that's where we probably would house like your bilingual skill set. If you want somebody to have like a higher education degree, but at the end of the day, if we can get somebody who's a good fit, who is meeting the minimum qualifications, and then we all know, like, at the beginning of our career, we don't have the same wisdom that we do, like, in the middle of our career or towards the end. You grow, and as an organization, we need to probably adopt some of those philosophies, knowing that people will grow within their career too. So
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I did want to touch upon the visas, though, real quick, though, because we did run into a situation where we were trying to hire somebody in a hard-to-fill position, and it was a visa situation. I think what has happened is the previous administration, they have made it very difficult for people to secure a working visa. So what they do is you have to do the sponsorship. But then, unfortunately, if you sponsor a candidate, a lot of times then they go into a lottery system, so it doesn't mean that it's confirmed that they would be able to work. So that's one of the struggles that we have found in our department. It's not that we're not exploring it. It's not that we don't want to support those ideas. But yeah, we work through those things. And thank you, Megan. I appreciate that.
And that was kind of my question. When we look at recruitment and retention, what ideas would there be to increase that candidate pool that you were talking about of certified staff? Because I think that's one of the issues that we struggle with a bit in bilingual programs is when we look at our staffing, we get to the point where we're in competition with other larger districts, other dual language bilingual districts for a very small pool of candidates. And so when we look at recruitment, are there any differentials that are, in play? Are there any, other opportunities that are being explored that could be a part of that recruiting repertoire that we'd be able to communicate to potential candidates about?
So I think, I think because of the challenges with the certification piece, I think a lot of it comes back to the pathways and helping people with that certification piece. And I don't know if I answered your question, Tony, but I do think like we do have some opportunities. We just gotta figure out how to put those plans and those processes in place.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Evelyn, you're on mute, I think.
Thank you. I was just going to say that seems like a good segue to talking about the Pathways program, but I wanted to make sure everybody had a chance to ask Tanya questions if they had any other ones. Because Anthony and Rosa Maria, you were talking about the Pathway program or the licensing today?
That's correct.
Yes. Yes. So are there any other questions for Tanya before we do that? No? Okay. Thank you so much, Tanya, for that. Was so much really valuable information.
Thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity. I don't feel like we've ever really had a chance to talk about some of the things or the ideas that we're working on. So I think as time goes on and we get some of these systems and structures in place, we'll be providing updates to the board on some of the things that we're putting in place. So I can't promise that it's going to happen overnight, but I want you guys all to know that we're working really hard on trying to get some of these things in place.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, and then Megan had made a comment in the chat, and I agree, and I think somebody else said that they agreed, but it was to recruit, locally versus the visa thing, and those I think are important discussions to have, and I think because as a district, I think it's important to have a vision about what we value as. Otherwise it seems like we're kind of fighting against each other because not really fighting against each other, but one person might say, well, why aren't we hiring, if we're just interested in having teachers that speak Spanish or they're Latino teachers, then it would make sense to just do that. But maybe, I think many of us would agree that we're interested in more of a grow your own kind of approach, or offering at least some opportunities. But I think we haven't had those discussions. So it seems that would be important, to talk about that and to have that clear about what we're doing as a district,
So it looks like Board Member Miller, sorry, and Delgado.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
No, I'll just be super quick. I just think that we're asking people to invest, like the community to invest in our district, and we need to do everything that we can as a district to invest in our own communities. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
No, and I appreciate that feedback too, because I think when I look at the work that we're doing in HR, that all comes from the district initiatives and in the strategies that we're putting in place. And so it becomes this philosophical question, do we recruit locally? Do we look outside of the community? And so I always want to support what those district initiatives are. So I think, as we explore some of these strategies, it's never ever a one size fits all with how we're recruiting. But if there are intentional things that you want our department to really be focusing on, I think Board Member Miller and Board Member Delgado, you would need to share those thoughts and what those initiatives are with Dr. Keyser, so then he could delegate those things to our department. So. All right. Well, is there anything else for me?
Maria, did you have something else? I wasn't sure if you had something or no. No. All right. I guess thank you very much, Tanya. So then that brings us to Rosa Maria and Tony.
All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm going to jump off.
Okay.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks.
So Tony and I are going to.
Yep. Go ahead, Rosa Maria.
No, I was just going to say that you were going to start us out.
Yeah. Rosa Maria and I put together a short presentation for the Ad Hoc Language Barrier Committee, focusing on our ESL and bilingual licensure supports and opportunities. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to show, everybody can see my screen? Okay. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to show some data about our current staffing and the percentage of teachers across the district in bilingual programs that are certified. As you can see from this list, out of our 20 ESL teachers currently, 18 of them are certified, so 90%. Bilingual teachers on the Spanish side, 17 of 24 are currently certified, and that's kindergarten through 8th grade. And then in world languages, we currently have 8 out of 9 of our teachers are certified in world languages. And so of all of the staff in the department, we're looking at 85 to 90% of all of the staff being certified in their respective licensure areas. Mm-hmm. Okay. Some opportunities as far as licensure. Over the course of the last several years, there has definitely been community and board interest and support for offering opportunities to develop licensure plans or programs for this particular group of staff members, but also through the Grow Your Own program, to other groups as well. And I think that's an important thing to talk about that Tanya kind of touched on earlier, is really looking at, the local support and interest, the local resources as far as, being a district as diverse as we are with the population of language resources that we have here in the school district of Beloit and in the state line community. How can we approach recruitment, retention, licensure, not just today, but also into the future from a grow your own perspective. And I think that's something that, as you heard Tanya talk about a little bit, the district from a larger perspective is interested in working on, and we definitely within the bilingual department are interested in doing the same. In bilingual programs, we do have a unique opportunity in that with Title III funds, an allowable expense for the use of Title III funds is to support licensure of staff to pursue both ESL and bilingual licenses. Because those are both hard to fill positions, the use of Title III, that grant, is allowable to support the pursuit of these certifications. And we have had in the past a relationship with UW-Whitewater to run a cohort for ESL bilingual licensure. Typically, when we have staff in this program, we ask them to sign a memorandum of understanding for continuing education reimbursement, which is kind of a standard practice that the district uses for staff that are in tuition reimbursement opportunities. And that is a very similar process to what administrators have access to, I believe, paraeducators as well. And then we talked about the mentoring opportunities that exist in the district, and Kurt hit the nail on the head when he talked about at the building level, if you have one bilingual teacher who's a new hire or one ESL teacher who's a new hire, a world language teacher, you really do want to try to pair those staff members with somebody that's within their same discipline. Based on what you heard Kurt talk about in terms of how many staff member we have trained as mentors, that may or may not always be an option, just because of the size of our district and the kind of newness of the new teacher mentor project. And we're kind of in year 2, right, Kurt, of that process. And so we're really developing a way to build the number of trained mentors that we have across disciplines, so that we have opportunities to serve those new hires with somebody that shares that expertise area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And one thing I wanted to add to Grow Your Own is because, and I did this project a few years ago about recruitment retention of teachers of color, and across the nation, we, at that point, and I'm sure that it's increased now, across the nation, there's a net loss of about 16,000 teachers of color across the nation. That's including Latino teachers. So as far as recruiting from other places and bringing them to Beloit, I don't know how, I feel that the Grow Your Own is a much better opportunity. Investing our time and our efforts into that with our paraprofessionals, our homeschool liaisons, even our students, is definitely a path that we do want to explore and expand.
And then we talk about some challenges that we might have. And Rosemary, you want to go through this one?
Yes. Okay, so we not only have teachers who are certified as teachers and need the add-on license for bilingual education, because the state of Wisconsin requires teachers who are working with a larger population of ELs in the bilingual program, which is what we have for dual language. But we have teachers who have bachelor's degrees and are doing the provisional license, the 1 year. So they also need access to not only the bilingual, but also the initial elementary, right now having the 1st through 8th grade, well, kindergarten through 8th grade in our district. When looking, and doing just the initial add-on for someone who has a bachelor's to get their elementary license, that's a 2 to 3 year process. And Tony has been looking at all these different programs across the state, asking CISA 2 to help us with this initial licensure need that we have. And many universities have the response we get, and including the CISAs, is that we have the add-on for bilingual. We don't have the initial certification program. So he did find one with Concordia where they were willing to do that as a postgraduate program for our teachers who have bachelor's degrees or working as a teacher but need that initial licensure. And we were looking to do a cohort with our teachers, but there is a certain number that we have to reach before we're able to host as a district. And I don't, at this point, I don't know what the latest numbers have been, but like I alluded to earlier, CISA 2 has a program in development. They've sent it to DPI. They're trying to get it approved, but it is a process, and they can't give us a date as to when that will happen. We've reached out to UW-Whitewater. They have some programs, not ones that would fit our need. The ESL bilingual, they're a lot more flexible with that. With the initial licensure, it's more traditional university. And then CISA 1 does have a program as well. We have, in the past, we have had a couple of teachers who have gone through that program, but it is, the feedback I've received from the teachers is that it is a lot of, it's very fast-paced. The expectation is that they would get there, rather than taking a 2 to 3 year process for the initial licensure, it's more like 1 to 2 years, and that's a lot of stress for someone who's just starting out as a teacher. And, in these positions, they're hard to fill because even our counterparts in Milwaukee and Madison have a very hard time finding bilingual teachers. In the state of Wisconsin, Tony, you know the numbers better than I do as to how many teachers are licensed bilingual in Wisconsin, at least available to.
Right.
I'm sorry, I lost. Oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that in the state of Wisconsin, when we look at, the teacher shortage in and of itself, that teacher shortage is exacerbated when it comes to hard to fill positions, like bilingual, ESL, science, CT, career technology education, multiple others. And hard to fill is defined federally, and we recognize as a district that these positions are most definitely hard to fill. And we should be able to use, additional grant resources to, attract people to those positions, support people to stay in those positions. And that's something that as a district, work with the Wisconsin Association of Business officials and look at how we can use Title II, Title IV, Title III grants. I think we're, as a teaching, learning, and equity team, as a human resources team, really looking to expand our understanding of the use of those grants to support this kind of work. Because I know just in the limited time I've been, working with licensure opportunities, there's not always, I've had to go to DPI on multiple occasions to get clarity, on the fact that we can use Title III funds to support teacher licensure, because that hasn't always been the understanding in this district. Now, we've gotten clarification on it on multiple occasions, and there's no question about that. But that's another one of those, when we talk about, increasing or improving lines of communication between TLE and HR, that's one of the things that we'll be working on. The other thing that is a challenge with cohorts, and Rosemaria talked about this a bit, typically universities will run a cohort if you can get up to 5 students. And typically, in order to host a cohort, which has really been our goal with every cohort that we've ever run, our goal is to always try to host in our district, because we know that's the most convenient and efficient for our staff. It's the least stress-inducing on our staff when they don't have to travel to Madison or Milwaukee, CISA 1 or wherever it is, or even Whitewater. If we can host, we always prefer to, but we have to have at least 10 staff members to get to the place where we can do that. And working with Concordia, and trying to negotiate, the program status so that we get a reduced tuition rate, and also the ability to have the cohort here in town, we've kind of reached our limit in terms of who we think will be participating in our cohort this year, and Concordia is going to be sending flyers to us that I can share with surrounding districts, offering them the opportunity to participate in our cohort if they have staff who are in need of that license also, and that would allow us to get to the 10-person cohort threshold so that we could host here in town. Go ahead, Rosemary.
The other, at the end, the limited resources, Tony alluded to that. Right now, we're pretty limited to our trying to creatively use our title funds to do that, which, the amount that we receive for those is not as much as what, for example, with Title III is a fraction of what Title I receives, for example. But the opportunity is there, and just using those funds creatively and trying to do as much as you can with the funding that we have. Kurt, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I'm wondering about, now with COVID, we've been doing, colleges have been doing a lot more online. If there would be, even past this, some flexibility with doing some of that, using the digital platform that could make that a lot easier, in terms of numbers, or even when you could have people in a cohort from another area of the state even. I wonder if something like that could be explored with them now that they've had the more experience with it in the past year.
Yeah, they're definitely willing to do as much virtual, limiting the in-person instruction, kind of a blended hybrid model. They're all in favor of that. It's still a matter of, when we do the recruiting of other districts to try to find people for this cohort, we're almost doing Concordia's work for them to a certain extent. You know what I mean? And so it is. And that's the thing with Concordia, is they've been very responsive to the needs of our candidates, and they've been the most responsive to our needs as a district, because we've been through this process so many times with different entities. We went to Beloit College. We've worked with UW-Whitewater before. We've worked with CISA too to try to, and like Rosemary said, everybody has the add-on licensure programs. Very few people, or very few higher ed organizations have initial licensure programs, because when they think initial licensure, they're thinking traditional college pathway, and these are, second career candidates, or, changing career candidates that already have a bachelor's degree. And the idea that they can't do undergrad programming typically, because that's typically traditional, on-campus kind of coursework. And so the post-bac program is their best option, because they do typically frame it within a more of an adult learning context, where you can do the courses at night. There are more blended learning opportunities. But again, this has been a market that we've been trying to get filled for a handful of years, and there's been no taker. We had several meetings with Beloit College last year for a very similar program, and they did not have the capacity to help us with the post-baccalaureate needs that we have. So
I just have one thing.
Sure.
For I'm going to say just one thing before Board Member Delgado also raised her hand. The thing also that we've also considered is that the CISAs, with their programs, they don't offer a graduate degree, whereas, for example, Concordia, they do offer that at the end of this program that the teachers would have master's degrees, which is another thing that is more attractive, because with the CISA you get your licensure, but there aren't any credits, university credits that traditionally have been used for the teachers to support them in being able to pursue postgraduate work. So, Board Member Delgado, you had your hand up.
Yes. So I see, based on what you guys are presenting, it looks like Concordia is probably the best route for those teachers that need to get their certificate and also to pursue that either the master's or their bachelor's in education.
So I have a question regarding like the teachers that come from other countries that, I guess what is the difference between teachers that come from another country that have, like, say, an education degree, a degree in education, or, how do you use that when they come here? Do they have to get anything else in addition to what they bring from another country? And what is the difference between, like, a person that is here already and is applying here that maybe has an educational degree, like, from another country, but it's participating here, is not actually being hired from the other country, is being hired within our district or our communities? Why is it that they have to get, like, an additional, or maybe, like, a translation of credits or translation? And I don't know what all that, because I'm not in education, so I really don't have any idea. So if you can just explain that would be great.
That's a great question. The teachers that are coming from a different country that are sponsored by a visa agency, they typically already have the credentials in their home country, and then Wisconsin recognizes them as visiting teachers. So all they have to do when they come to the state of Wisconsin to teach is to present their credentials. And that's what happens through the consulate and the visa sponsoring agency, is they vet those materials. When the teachers arrive, they apply for their Wisconsin visiting teacher license, and then they're considered highly qualified according to Wisconsin DPI guidance. As far as the other candidates, I'm sorry, go ahead, Rosemaria.
No, I was just going to ask, and that's the usually only good for 3 years, because that's the length of the time, isn't it? I remember it makes.
Yeah, it's good for 3 years with a 2-year extension. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And then as far as the other candidates that you talked about, anybody that has, we've often hired candidates that have a degree from another country, but they have to send their transcript to an interpreting or a translating agency that specializes in translating those documents for equivalency in the United States. And once they determine that degree is a bachelor's degree, then they're eligible for a license with stipulations and can teach. But I do not believe that I have yet had a situation where a teacher has come from another country, and I'm not talking about a teacher that's being sponsored for a visa, a different country that's not in that program. If they have an education certificate, I feel like they would have the same opportunity for reciprocity with the state of Wisconsin based on that same translation of their foreign credential or their credential from their home country, and then that translation, would demonstrate equivalency, and then I think you would probably be able to, submit that to the Department of Public Instruction for consideration for licensure. But that's I'm making a couple of assumptions there, but I think it would definitely be, because we get people from the state of Illinois come to Wisconsin to teach. They send their credentials to DPI. We have reciprocity agreements with different states, so I think there is that possibility. But again, I've not experienced that really with teachers from other countries that have teaching degrees, teaching certificates in their home country.
Okay. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, I've only known of one teacher who has had to do that, and what ends up happening is they do take these translated transcripts to a local licensing program or university, who then goes through the courses and sees how much of it can match up to their program. Because if they're coming from another country, there's a lot of coursework that they're not going to have. For example, just because of the differences in the state of Wisconsin being unique in the requirements that they have, but being able to figure out what what courses the person had would match what Wisconsin requires, and then trying to fill those holes to have the person qualify for a Wisconsin license.
Yeah, and I was going to say something similar to that, because even like, for instance, here, if you're in a technical college and then you try to get, and you get an associate's degree through a technical college, and then you decide to go to a university, you know, only some of those credits may be transferable. Even some technical colleges will not, or universities will not validate any of your technical college credits because it's, you know, a more like accredited university. So I was going to ask, was there any type of difference in that? Because I think it would be, if we have that even here in the United States. I would not, you know, doubt that it would be sometimes, you know, somewhat difficult to transfer all the credits that they would have in a different country over to, you know, to a degree here. The other question that I had was, so you presented some of the initial licensure post-baccalaureate program. And within those is like Concordia, Whitewater, and then the CISA 1 and CISA 2. Up to how much guidance are, you know, people that are, you know, transferring or trying to get that certificate, how much guidance or even hand-holding do they get from the district in order for them to, you know, pursue any of those opportunities? Because if you think about, you know, people that are, if they're coming from another country and this is the first time they're, you know, making any type of, you know, doing any of that type of process, it's something that is like foreign, like it's unknown. It's something, you know, it's so, myself thinking in a perspective of, you know, the clients that I serve in my own realm of work that I do, they require a lot of hand-holding to get through any type of process, only because, like I said, it's foreign. It's foreign to them, so they've never gone through that system. So is there any type of guidance or any type of, say, group that will provide that guidance for them? And is that guidance or group known to the individuals that are pursuing any type of, I don't know, do we provide any type of reference to something that would assist them to get through that process?
Well, I don't know if you want to address Tony, or I could. I mean, as far from my perspective, that is a huge need. I think that in some ways, the different licensing agencies or universities, they do have their own, many of them, you know, and I would imagine that all the ones on this list, well, actually, I know that all the ones on this list do as well, have different departments within their university that's their purpose, is to help whether the person is a minority student or an international student or any fit any of those needs for English as a second language, you know, those sorts of things. However, how aware the students would be, for example, in this case, the teachers looking to get their licensure, that depends, you know, and it is a need. It is something that, you know, in an ideal world, you know, in an ideal situation, school district and university would be working in tandem with supporting the people reaching those, wanting to reach out or wanting to get that licensure. You know, and I think that it's, as far as our capacity, like mine or Tony's capacity to do that for the teachers, you know, we do what we can, you know, we guide as much as we can, but in reality, you know, the capacity of either one of us to do that, it is a huge task. It really is. I've tried, you know, in the past to provide that guidance and can only get so far because it's, you know, it really does take a lot of knowledge with knowing how that university works, knowing who the people are that they need to contact and work with, and knowing that there should be a department that helps with that, with their needs, but knowing who those people are, that really, you know, depends on the university and how much they make that known to.
Right. And I think that's one of those where that's definitely an area of growth for us. And I think the thing that we're looking at, and I referenced the role that TLE, Teaching Learning Equity, plays in this process, and also the role that human resources obviously plays in this process. It's not one department or the other. It really is a collaborative endeavor. Because I think when we look at how we onboard these staff members, the day they come into the school district of Beloit without a certification in hand, we should be handing them a piece of paper that talks about, here are the opportunities that you have to gain licensure, and here is what we as a district are going to do to support that, whether that's from Rosa Maria and myself, or that's from, the mentor cadre that we have, or maybe that's something that we haven't developed yet in terms of, an additional human resource that we could use to support these folks in their licensure journey, whether that's that recruitment position that Tanya was talking about. I do not know, but I think we need to develop a stronger, more sustainable system around this, because we every year as a department we have staff who are not certified. Every year as a department we have staff asking for opportunities of where can I get licensed, what programs, and until this year with Concordia as a partner, we have struggled to help them connect with a post-baccalaureate program that was tailored to meet their adult learning needs. And so the value of Concordia as a partner is clear. And I think we're in the position now where we're going to be able to say, as we go through this next hiring season and onboard folks in August, that here's a tried and true program that is a partner, and here's what you need to do, and here are some support structures so that you can be successful. Because ultimately the other part of this is a huge commitment on the part of the teacher candidates, and the idea that they enter the program but are not able to complete the program doesn't help our end goal either. We have to put, and I think Megan's the one that said it, Board Member Miller talked about, the investments that we make in our staff, we obviously expect a return, but that's where we just ask for years of service when they're completed, that we invest $12,000 or $15,000 in a staff member over the course of several years with the idea that they are going to provide service for a duration of time into the district in exchange for that. So
I just want to say thank you for being aware that that's a need. It is very concerning to me that we don't have anything available like that, because if you think about it, we're preparing our children, we're preparing kids to go into a university, and if we don't have anything available for those teachers that are in need of going to that second level education and getting their certificate, what is the expectation that we would have anything available for our kids if we don't have that for our educators? So I think that that's something just so important, to really ponder on and really think about creating. If it's not you and Rosa Maria, maybe it's another position that needs to be created, because we need to have that available for educators. They need to feel supported. They need to know that they have, that guidance. They have that resource for them, if they want to, move up or, get their certificate or try something new. So just, that's just my thought. And I feel very passionate about that, because I know the struggle. I know the struggles when you don't know where to go, you don't know what you need, and there's no one to tell you or to give you any type of guidance. It's discouraging, that should be like a big part of our retention plan, to have something available for them.
And I think, go ahead, Rosa Maria.
Okay. So Board Member Delgado, I definitely agree with you. We have conversations, Tony and I, about our focus and related to this, but not directly. The conversation of looking towards becoming more, rather than pre-K 12, being more pre-K 16, because we have, and even with going back to your own, are we recruiting our own high school students, and how do we create these cohorts so that students can go to school together and keep that relationship with school districts so that they come back and work for us, work with us. But that is even, and just as an anecdote, I remember back when Tony was at McNeil, he invited me to come to some sort of community fair. I don't remember exactly which community fair it was, but there was a student there who was representing UW-Whitewater. And we started talking. He was a young man, Latino, bilingual, and he wanted to be a social studies teacher. And I started talking to him about, and even just like the counseling that was happening at the university was like, okay. And he said, well, I'm studying to be a history teacher. And I said, well, have you thought about getting your broad field? And he's like, what's that? I said, well, that means that you're qualified to teach more than just history. You can teach different areas of social studies. You might want to get another, if the social studies is where you want to be, you might also want to get another area of certification. And he said he didn't, nobody had told him that. Nobody had mentioned that to him. And I said, and on top of that, since you're bilingual, have you looked into getting your ESL bilingual license? It's another 18 to 24 credits. It's only going to, if you start now, you can finish it while you're doing the rest of your degree. And he said, I didn't even know that existed. So, that there's a big need for communication, but having someone on staff that knows that sort of thing and is guiding people who, that we kind of keep in touch or hang on to our students that have been going on to pursue college, university, and even with our teachers, paraprofessionals, anyone who is within our school district that have gone on to university and are wanting to pursue a teaching career, being that sort of mentor or being that sort of connection so that they understand, what will in their career help them get, not only have the most opportunities available to them, but also helps fill high need areas. So.
Rosemary, do you want to go over the next steps, or do you want me to?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so as Tony mentioned before, we wanted to talk to other school districts and see if they have teachers who are in that same situation of needing the initial licensure, so we can have them join our cohort and we can host. That's the hope, is that we would get to that point. One thing that we wanted to do with, and I'm sorry, Tony, the next point I'm a little...
So just making sure that we continue to coordinate with, this goes to Maria's, board member Delgado's point about helping the candidates navigate the bureaucracies that are inherently a part of universities and CISAs, because we agree 100% that, particularly if you're coming from, another country with a bachelor's degree and are not familiar with the higher education systems and structures here in the United States, we need to support, those that facilitate that process in any way that we can. So that's something as far as coordinating with licensing agencies.
And then the final point with our dual language program, to better serve the needs of our English learners, our bilingual learners, we are looking in the future, to offer the ESL license opportunity to the teachers who are teaching the English side of the dual language program, because we know that having them have these skills would better meet the needs of our students.
So then this third point, this would be not an initial, but already teachers that are certified?
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in discussing, with the group of people that are entering the cohort now, and just looking from a more holistic perspective, building opportunities for them to collaborate, within the district, working with them to develop their schedules and just be as supportive of their academic progress as we possibly can. And then, as they progress through the program and, get to the point where they're ready to take various assessments, whether it's praxis or some of the other things that are required for licensure, to provide opportunities for that, to support that as well, because that has proven over time to be a challenge for some of our staff, as well as getting to the point where you complete a program but then struggle to pass the FORT test or praxis or something else. So that's another area of support that we'd like to develop over the next couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
Do you guys have any other questions about licensure for ESL or bilingual?
I see Maria has a hand raised there.
I'm sorry, I didn't put my hand down.
Okay.
I don't have a question regarding this, but maybe we can, I don't know if we'll be able to just ask more questions, because related to retaining employees. And I know that I have had emails back and forth with Mr. Bosco related to some concerns as far as like contracts that ESL teachers have in the renewing process, and the lack of getting a raise after, every time that it's renewed. So I don't know if Mr. Bosco can talk about that just a little bit.
Sure.
How that works.
Yep. So typically what happens with non-certified staff, well, let's start with certified staff. Typically with certified staff, their annual increase is based on the consumer price index, so cost of living increase. And typically staff who are not certified are essentially frozen where they enter the salary matrix. So a staff member that isn't certified would not get that consumer price index pay increase from year 1 to year 2 like everybody else would, as long as everybody else has a satisfactory educator effectiveness, evaluation for that year. So that is something that, in these board member Delgado, this is myself and Evelyn and Dr. Keyser met a couple weeks ago to discuss some of our possible recommendations, and in having conversation with Dr. Keyser and with Ms. Williams, we have some practices here in the school district of Beloit that are open to adjustment, because there's no DPI regulation or any other requirement that says we have to do it that way. And I think as a retention tool and just from a humanistic perspective, that's something that we are looking at addressing. And so that's one thing. And I've spoken with the ESL bilingual teachers about that particular issue, because they raised it in a group meeting that we had, and we told them that we would, carry that forward to see if we could have that addressed. And then, the other thing with being a part of the cohort is that when these folks do finish their licensure and have earned a master's degree, they would be placed on in the master's lane, for pay, which is something that will benefit them down the road. But we invest in their ability to earn that degree and gain additional knowledge, and in return for that knowledge and the improvement or the depth of teaching that as a result of that experience, they earn more money as professional educators. So it's a part of the symbiotic relationship, right, between districts and teachers. So did I answer your question?
What I got is that it's in the works, and hopefully that works is going to be prioritized for those staff members. I really hope that something can really come out of it.
Right.
If there's any way that, we can move around, and I'm not sure if there was any type of stipulation or anything that it's actually being followed as to why they're not getting their cost of living adjustment, because that's what it is. It's the cost of living adjustment that, I think that everyone that commits to our district, and more if it's, I just can't imagine, being in the district for 5 straight years and making the same amount. That is just ridiculous. So hopefully that's going to be prioritized and really put on the front burner for us to, to have.
Sure, and that would be, a parameter for all staff that are licensed with stipulations, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think. Yeah, so I think that's definitely because you run into the same scenario with, special education teachers or other hard-to-fill positions. People are making progress toward licensure, but they're frozen on the pay scale. That's a disincentive, right? So, yeah, absolutely.
It's a huge disincentive more when you're trying to retain staff.
Right.
And, have that continuity of, staff members.
Right. I don't know where so are there any other questions on ESL bilingual licensure? We appreciate the questions. Great questions.
I think the more we know, it's like the more that we learn, is the more that we see those disparities and barriers, that our staff face. And with our staff facing those barriers and those disparities, it trickles down to our students and it trickles down to our community. So, I'm really grateful for this cohort because I think that, we're able to really look into and pose some of those big issues that I think have been not known to a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off what Maria was saying, I think a lot of the things like the lack of knowing about certain programs for teachers, this is some of the same discussions we had about students, like not knowing, their counselors, for example, not being able to help them navigate DACA or other opportunities like that. I think it's a very critical thing that we're getting at is just the specific challenges that Latino students and teachers face that it's a real big opportunity area. So, is there anything else for Tony or Rosa Maria before we move on? No. Well, we're already about 20 minutes over, and the last point on our agenda was to really think about items to present to the board, which it seems like that would be an entire meeting in itself. So is there a motion to move that agenda item to the following meeting?
I'll move that.
Okay, and anyone to second that?
I'll second.
All in agreement?
See?
Say
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And then that brings us to our adjournment. Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting for today?
I'll move that too.
Thank you, Kurt. And a second?
I'll second again.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, then that concludes our meeting for tonight. Thank you, everybody, for the wonderful discussion, and we'll see you next time for more.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.